What's going on, guys? My name is Keegan Hanks, and welcome to another video where we talk about how you can live longer and thrive in whatever way you want to live life. Today we're going to talk about how you can get stronger and live longer while doing it, and ultimately the best way to live longer is going to be through strength training, and we'll talk about why that is in a little bit. Again, I am a personal trainer and a coach. If you have any medical issues, make sure you are talking with a doctor. This is not any medical advice or anything like that. This is my experience working with clients on getting them stronger and getting myself stronger. The ultimate goal while working with my clients is getting them to be healthy, strong, and engaged in life at whatever age they're in. Whether they're 30, 40, 50, or even 70, the goal is the same. I want them to be able to live the way they want to live. And the best way to do that is through strength training. Strength training, and we'll get into this in a little bit, is the best way to optimize your health, your longevity, and to put yourself in a physical place where you're able to do whatever you want when you want it. For me, I want to be able to move freely, engage with my grandkids, and have fun with them, and go on adventures across the country and across the world whenever I want, at whatever age I want. Strength training is one of the best things that you can do for yourself regardless of what age you're at. With age, it's very natural to start to lose muscle mass and tone and dexterity and control over your body, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to continue to train and continue to get strong for where you are now. Clinically, this process is called sarcopenia. On average, the typical muscle mass loss after the age of 30 is 3 to 5% for every decade, and it only gets worse after that. After about the age of 50, you're losing nearly 10% of your muscle mass every decade. This happens for multiple reasons. One of which is your hormones are naturally going to decrease, your biological body is going to start to slow down, so cell reactions and those kinds of things will slow down. You're also going to generally have a change in your diet and nutrition, and your activity levels are going to drastically decrease with age. The first two are not really things that we can control, or at least they're not within the purview of this video. If you do think you need to get your hormones checked, again, work with your doctor, work with an endocrinologist to make sure if that would be right for you. But we do have control over the latter two. We can control our diet and we can control our activity or our fitness. In actuality, it's not necessarily the specific muscle mass that's the most important. It's the expression of strength, or how strong you are, that's really going to cause a decrease in all-cause mortality. A recent study showed that regardless of muscle mass, metabolic syndromes, your sedentary time, or your leisure time physical activity, things like pick up basketball, that kind of stuff, regardless of all of those things, strength was the biggest predictor of a decrease in all-cause mortality. So it's important to not just build muscle size, but also have that muscle be able to do things and express its size through strength. So let's talk about some things that you can do that's within your control to optimize your nutrition and your strength training to benefit your strength and muscle mass overall. Let's start with the nutrition aspect of this. It's going to be really important to be able to give yourself the fuel and the building blocks necessary to develop the muscle once you do start a specific strength training protocol. If you're just fueling yourself with a lot of crappy foods, you're not going to be able to have the energy necessary to train hard, and you're not going to really be able to give yourself the building blocks of muscle, which is protein, or what protein breaks down into, amino acid. Protein is one of the most important macronutrients for muscle building. Carbs and fat do play a role, they are important, but for muscle building specifically, they are less important. I talk about protein consumption a lot in all of my content, so I'm going to keep this one relatively brief and try and add a little bit nuance to it from what I usually discuss. But we want to eat about 0.8 grams to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. That typically is the best median, where you're consuming enough protein but not over consuming and it's taking away your other macronutrients. For me, I'm about 200 pounds, so I consume about 200 grams of protein per day. Ideally, this is going to be coming from lean protein sources, things like chicken, turkey, Lean beef and wild game are some really good options. It's not to say you can't get healthy and strong with a vegan or vegetarian diet. I just choose not to eat that way. Make sure you do your own research on how to appropriately eat if you are looking to be meat-free. There is a lot more nuance to it than consuming animal product. Personally, I'm shooting for 1 gram of protein per day just because I enjoy the taste of it. I enjoy having it in my diet. You can do 0.8 and it's really not going to be that big of a difference. You're really splitting hairs at the difference there. As I said, beyond just protein, carbs and fat do play a vital role in just making sure you are a healthy individual. Fats are important for hormone production, absorbing vitamins that are fat soluble. It's also going to give food flavor, and we're here to enjoy our life. And it's also going to give us some protection for our cells and our brain. A lot of the sheaths around our cells are fat. So it's just going to help provide the nutrients necessary for that. Fats typically are going to be around 20 to 30% of your daily caloric goal. So for me, I eat about 3,000 calories a day. That's going to be about 67 grams of fat to 100 grams of fat per day. Carbs are going to provide you with the energy source necessary for a heavy strength training session. It's going to give you that quick energy that's going to enable you to really push yourself and to work your muscles in a way that's going to necessitate them to build back stronger. The typical wisdom with calculating how many carbs to eat per day is just taking the rest of the calories that you have throughout the day from protein and fat and just making those carbs. Here, I'm gonna break down a typical day of eating for me to maximize muscle growth for longevity. I eat about 3,000 calories per day, 200 grams of protein, which is about 800 calories. And then I eat about 100 grams of fat, which is going to be about 900 calories. That leaves a remaining 1,300 calories that I'm gonna make into carbs, which equates to about 325 carbs. That's not going to be exactly what I eat every day. I'm very relaxed with my diet, and it's more of I hit the 200 grams of protein, that's my ultimate target, and then the fats and carbs are kind of wherever they lay. I just make sure I hit my protein target, and that's all I really stress about each and every day. Don't make nutrition a point of stress for you. As we'll talk in a later video, chronic stress leads to negative health outcomes in a long run. Let's talk about some of the best exercises to build muscle and to get yourself strong. Ultimately, that's gonna come down to your morphology, your skill set, and the things that you enjoy doing. There's not really a best exercise for everybody. There's a best exercise for you, but there are principles that are important for you to hit no matter what your skill set is or what you're good at or your morphology. And I'd like to break this down into 4 different categories. It's basically the 4 different movement patterns that we have as humans that we want to make sure that we're training and getting stronger at overall. The first one we have is the hip hinge. This is a deadlift type movement where you're hinging at the hips. This is ideally going to be working your glutes and your hamstrings, but it's going to work a lot more muscles as well depending on the exercise. Next, we have the squat. This is going to be knee bending movements, essentially where you're sitting down in a chair, things like that, where the knee and the hip are moving in conjunction. This is going to use the muscles of the quads and glutes predominantly. Next, we have pressing. We want to make sure we're doing both horizontal and vertical presses. That's like a chest press, a shoulder press. These are going to work muscles in our shoulders and our chest. Lastly, we have pulling. That's again going to be both vertical and horizontal, things like pull-ups or rows. This is mainly going to use the muscles in our back. Each category has target muscles, as I mentioned, but there's going to be a lot more muscles that are used in the actual execution of the exercises. Something like the core is going to be used a lot in hip hinge and squat movements to help stabilize and hold the weight. When you break down working out into these 4 different categories, The specific exercises you do doesn't really matter as long as it's working for you. Ultimately, you're going to end up hitting the whole body regardless of what you do. As I mentioned, with pulling and pressing, it's very important that you do both vertical and horizontal. This is going to make sure that you have healthy shoulders in all different planes. We want to be able to reach up overhead. We want to be able to reach out in front of us and have strong, healthy shoulders in these different positions. This is the basic structure that I use with every single one of my clients. Most of my clients are 2 to 3 times per week, and they're hitting full body workouts to make sure that they have enough frequency. So I make sure I hit at least 1 or 2 exercises out of each of these categories every session. I know I said there are not any perfect or best exercises for everyone, but I'm gonna list off some of my favorite exercises in these different categories. For a hip hinge, I love straight leg RDLs, I love deadlifts, I love hex bar deadlifts, I love glute bridges. These are all really good exercises to emphasize hip hinging type motion. For squat type movements, I love barbell squats, split squats, step ups. These are all really amazing exercises that work in different planes to get you moving in a squat type motion. For pressing, my favorite exercises is going to be the incline chest press, the overhead press with a barbell, or seated with dumbbells. And then I also love a flat dumbbell press. I like dumbbells just because it emphasizes each arm working independently of itself so that you can make sure you're having the appropriate coordination overall and you're not allowing one arm or one muscle to take over a lot more of the lift. And that carries over into our pulling. I love bent over rows with dumbbells. I love seated rows with a cable, individual cable. I love lat pull downs and pull-ups. These are all really good movements to maximize muscle growth in the back. Strength training is really amazing, but it does need to have some care taken to make sure that you are doing it safely and effectively and you're not wasting your time in the gym. Here are some of the best tips that I talk with my clients about in order to maximize your strength training program. Number 1 is getting adequate rest in the session. So when I'm in the gym, I see so many people, and with my clients, they're always trying to rush into the next exercise or into the next set. They're not allowing themselves to fully recover and to be able to maximize their actual effort within the next set. That doesn't mean you need to turn into a powerlifter where you're bringing in a folding chair and you're sitting down in between sets for 3 to 5 minutes. That's kind of ridiculous, and I understand we want to maximize efficiency here. So I recommend like a minute to a minute and a half rest in between each set. What I like to say to my clients when they're trying to rush through the exercise is we are strength training, we are not doing cardio here. We do cardio specifically to help improve the heart. When we're doing strength training, we're trying to maximize muscle growth. We're trying to maximize the use of our muscle. The next important tip is ensuring you have adequate recovery in between your sessions, ensuring that you have adequate sleep. You're fueling yourself appropriately in between your sessions and also getting enough water. When developing a program, you need to have a built-in form of recovery. So with my clients who work out 2 to 3 times per week, their sessions are never back to back. It is some form of spacing in between the session. At least 48 hours is a pretty good rule of thumb for being able to get back into the gym, especially since I train full body with them. We do want to allow for 48 hours so they can come back and train the same muscles over again. A couple tips to help improve your recovery is sleeping 7 to 9 hours per night, fueling appropriately, making sure you are eating enough protein, you're eating enough food, as we mentioned earlier. You can also start to get into your daily stress and kind of managing that overall. If you have a really bad day at work or a really bad week at work, it's probably not the best to go then give yourself a really hard strength session at the end of the week. It may feel good in the moment, but overall, over the long haul, that accumulated stress is not going to be ideal. The third thing that's a really important tip is thinking about how you're going to progress. So the way that we introduce progression into a training program is through progressive overload. That's going to look something like either gradually increasing the weights week over week or month over month, increasing the number of repetitions you're doing, increasing the number of sets you're doing. There's a lot of different things that you can play around with to progressively overload your body in your training program. To be able to do this appropriately, though, you do need to have consistency within your training program to where you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. Generally speaking, this is going to be in like a 4 to 6 week block to help manage boredom and prevent any plateaus. What I'll typically do with my clients, because they're not people that really love the gym, is I'll have 2 main lifts to start the session that are going to be the same week over week for that 4 to 6 week block, and then the rest of the session is kind of accessory, just fun things that they enjoy to do, and those are going to be different pretty much day to day. Last thing I want to mention is form. Without a doubt, this is the best tip that you can think about when you're trying to build muscle. Your risk of injury is drastically going to go down the better your form is for you. What we're able to do when we're healthy and we're not constantly injured is we can be a lot more consistent in the gym, which is going to help improve our gains overall and in the long run. There are so many different exercises and movements and different body types to talk about form that I can't really do that all within this video. These are some quick tips that I apply with my clients to help kind of understand where they need to be for that specific movement. We want to do 3 different things. We want to limit momentum while we're doing the exercise. When we're trying to maximize our strength and longevity, adding momentum can increase your risk of injury. Number 2 is making sure we're having good posture when we're doing the lift. If we're letting our back collapse or our chest collapse or our hips are shifting, is going to increase our risk of repetitive injuries or just overall injuries, pulling a muscle, hurting a joint, those types of things. We want to make sure we're in a good posture for ourselves for that move. And lastly, we want to make sure we choose appropriate weight, and that can be a little difficult when you're first starting out. One of the first things I do with any of my clients who have worked out before is drop the weight for any movement that they've done previously, just to make sure I nail that form, and then we can start to go up from there. And very commonly, the weight that I choose that's significantly lower than the weight they thought they could do is going to be just as hard as that heavier weight. They're just doing it with better form. The muscles are actually performing the movement. Implementing these 3 tips is going to make your strength training more effective and safer for you. I know this may seem like a lot, and frankly it is. I have dedicated the last 8 years of my life and career to understanding the best ways to maximize strength and muscle mass for longevity so that you don't have to. You can absolutely figure out all of this on your own, and you can make your own strength training program, and it can be effective. But if you don't want to have to worry about that, I have 3 training slots available for online coaching. If you're interested in that, comment coach down below and I will reach out to you and see what I can do to help you out. I hope you guys learned something from today's video and you understand how important it is to maximize your health through strength training. And if you found this helpful, please make sure you share, subscribe, and like this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.